little small there. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the live stream. So I think you see Exeter Rider in the chat. Maybe he's the only one so far. But, 809 days, 52,000 miles. That's what my friend John Dewey has done and finished a few months ago with his trip from Oregon all the way down to Ushuaia in the tip of South America and back. And so let's have a chat and find out what the trip and the journey and everything was all about. So without further ado, Mr. Dewey Rides, welcome to the live stream. And as I was saying to you earlier, I was looking and says, I've done a live stream with Dewey before. And when was it? It was March 17th, 2024. So almost exactly, just a little over 2 years ago. So
yeah, it seems like yesterday in some ways, though. Everything in my life for a couple of years moved very fast.
It does seem like yesterday, especially because I've been following it, and you get into that rhythm of every week you catch up with where's Dewey this week, what's he doing this week, and it's you feel like be following your life for the last more than 2 years, right?
Yeah. I think I looked, and it was almost 3 years ago that the first of the trip videos came out. I'd been doing some videos before that, and mostly to practice and get better at making videos for when I left on the trip. But yeah, I started the video.
Started watching your channel before when you were just doing like little trips and camping trips and trail rides and overnight stays and all around the sort of Oregon area and further afield in the US. And that was interesting. So, and then you talked about all your plans for going on the trip and all that kind of stuff. That was really exciting. I was kind of envious to a certain extent.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of people are envious. It's tough to get the kind of time to do it right. I think that a lot of people like the idea of it, but the reality of taking that much time and the disruption, and especially if you have a family, it's really almost impossible to think about being gone as long as I was.
Yeah, exactly. If you have a family and you're the breadwinner to some extent, and you have to support them, they're going to starve if you're not there. Yeah, it can be a bit
100%. Yeah, if I, the only way that I could afford to do it was to put everything in a storage unit.
So, but you're back now. You've been back for a little while, right? Have we lost?
And
oh,
yeah, I got back at the end of last summer, basically. So I've been back several months now. But
okay.
there's a big lag with the videos, obviously, because I filmed stuff faster and did more than doing a weekly video. I didn't have a full week in each video. Some videos were one day, some were a couple or 3 days. It kind of depended on what I was doing.
Oh no, you don't have to tell me. I've got videos that I published a couple of weeks ago which were filmed in July, and I just didn't have time to do it. Then other things happen. You think this is more important because it's more immediate, and that one's old anyway, and it ends up you're off schedule a lot. I still got one from doing a marshalling for a run in London from like August that is going to come out in the next few weeks. But yeah, but I think you talked a little bit about this in one of your videos about there was a particular moment or a particular event that was the spark for saying this is it. I'm going to do this now. If I don't do this now, I'm not going to do it, and I'm going to set off. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, well, it was something that going back 20 years when I was back on when there was nothing but forums and YouTube wasn't a thing, and that's how you found information about adventure riding and things. I started to see some Patagonia pictures here and there from people, and it was a whole different adventure for them back then. I'm sometimes envious of how remote that really was back then compared to now. But that kind of planted the seed. And then in 2015, I rode to Alaska, and I took a month to do that trip. And that was up to that point, that was the longest vacation I'd ever taken in my life. And, most of us, unless you happen to live somewhere where vacation is very generous, most people, you don't get to take a month to go do things. So after doing that, then I said, I really want a chance to travel more long term, because I realized that after 3 weeks or a month, you just start to get into that mode where you let go of the real world and let go of work and start to think about just traveling and not all the other stuff in your head. So I then started saying, okay, the first thing I need to do is just start stuffing a little bit of money away, right, every month, no matter what it is. If I have some extra money, it's going to go into a separate bank account that's going to be for travel. And at some point, that bank account's going to get big enough for what I want to do, whatever that is. And then, of course, COVID hit. And that was really, really what sparked it, is when the whole world shut down and borders shut down, and that kind of travel was not ever doable at that point. I said, when the world opens up, I've stuffed enough money away, and especially during COVID, I was able to put a lot more money into that process because my expenses went down. I wasn't commuting. You're not going out to eat because everything's closed. So I said, yeah, when things open back up, I'm going to go do it, because you don't know when the next pandemic's going to hit and the world's going to shut down again. I think we all learned that you can't take for granted the fact that you can do this stuff, because you may not always be able to. And that's what really sent me down I'm going to do it. I'm going to set a date and I'm just going to go.
Well, but you have been planning it for a while. You have been making preparations for it, putting money away. But then that was the thing that that said, okay, and it's very true, right? I mean, pandemic hits and everything changes, and I think the world hasn't really been the same since then.
No, it hasn't. And there's just, you realize that how uncertain everything is, and if you don't go now. And I also realized, as you start getting older, as we're all well aware, the things you can physically do aren't the same. And there were things on this trip that I wanted to do that did involve some physicality, and I wanted to be able to do those. I didn't want to get to the point where I didn't travel and do a trip like this until I retired, and then I would physically just not be able to do some of the stuff that I really wanted to go do and see.
Yeah. Okay. And so 2020 hit, and you said, I've got to do this now. But did you already know what that was? Because you've done Alaska, but was it set that was the next thing you wanted to do?
I was set that I wanted to ride to South America. The plan initially, and what I set out to do, was to ride to Ushuaia. I didn't know what a realistic budget was for it. I'd guessed, and you look at information and what other people say they've spent, but you don't know, and you always want to, go on the safe side of that. So on the safe side, I figured that I could go from, at the low end, 12 months. Maybe if I stretch it, I could go 18 months on a budget. And that was the original plan, was to take basically a year, follow summer the entire way from Portland down to Ushuaia, and then, likely ship the motorcycle back or something like that. And then when I started doing it, the finances of it and the cost of it, and I figured out how to do things cheaper, and, I was able to extend that to decide to ride all the way back up. And a big part of that was people that I met along the way, that I decided it was important to me to return to visit them and to see them, and I wanted to go back up.
Well, so that was actually one of the questions. So that's nice segue, as you were. When you started, was it about going to see places?
Yeah, 100%. I think, you want cultural things, right? You know that you're gonna meet people, but you don't know who you're gonna meet. You don't know the stories you're gonna have because you haven't done it yet. So yeah, I didn't even have a route. I would say I had a bunch of points marked of things that I had seen other people go to. I'd seen a YouTube video about. I saw it on Instagram. Whatever, a bunch of points, and all the way to the end of the trip, I never set out with a route. Every day I would wake up, and at breakfast with my coffee, I would look at my map and the points and see if there was a point, that in the vicinity that I wanted to try to get to or go to. And if it was kind of along the general direction I wanted to head or not, and if it was something that interested me and I wanted to go to. And sometimes that point was 2 or 3 days away, and then I would just kind of look at where there might be gas and a place to stay for the night in between there, and then I would head out in that direction. But I also learned that the times that Google might say or your mapping software might say and reality can be very, very different on both sides. It might take twice the time, and it might take half of the time of what it says, depending on the scenario. So a lot of times I would basically look at just a spot or two and say, okay, if I get to this point by lunchtime, then I have time to go to the next point. If I get there after lunch, then I need to stop there, and that's going to be my day. And I would just kind of figure it out from there. But everything was certainly initially based on points that I wanted to go to, and I would just try to link those points up and work my way south slowly as I connected those dots.
There's a question from Exeter Rider in that. Were you mainly camping or staying in hotels?
I mainly stayed in hotels. I had all my camping gear, and I did camp. But what I realized is the reality of the cost and the ease, in especially places like Peru or Bolivia, where you can get a decent hotel for the night for the equivalent of $8 or $10 US. And that includes breakfast, and that includes breakfast the next morning. Is I love camping, but that makes it really easy, and it doesn't prohibit the cost and being able to do the trip. It's not like you're saving a ton of money doing it that way.
Probably cost you the same to camp, right?
Yeah, in a safe campground. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to wild camp, there's certainly you can do it for less, but you're still saving $8 and you're taking a risk. And in my head, I had all these dreams of camping in Patagonia with views of mountains, right? That's what you build up. Then you get to Patagonia and realize that the wind is 40 miles an hour constantly, and it never lets up. And it's like, I don't want to be setting up my tent. No matter how good the view is, I'm not going to sleep tonight in this wind, and I don't want to be putting a tent up. So it was just
40
easier.
miles an hour. It's 40 miles an hour when it lets up.
Yes. And all right. And so that made it the camping less. The times that I camped were in places where I thought camping would enhance the experience that I was having. I camped quite a bit on the Chilean coast on my way down. Because the weather was beautiful, there were beautiful places to camp, and you're right on the beach that way. So I did that. And Chile is one of the more expensive countries in South America, so I was able to save a little money by camping in Chile. And then Tomek and I camped a couple of times while we were in Baja, because it's a safe area to camp. When you get into mainland Mexico, when you get into Sinaloa and some of these places, camping is probably not the best idea, just for your own safety. So you just want to get the hotels in those places.
Okay. So the idea, basically, when you set off, is like, these are the places that I want to see, right? These are the bucket list things. And I guess I know, I was just rewatching your video earlier today for when you actually went past Ushuaia and all the way down the Ruta J, all the way down to the end of the Ruta J, the southernmost road, paved road, I'm going to guess, paved or road in the world, nowhere further south other than Antarctica. And that was like that. I think that was like a ticket item for you, right?
Yeah, it was, and it felt much more like I got somewhere. When I rode into Ushuaia, it was a neat thing because everybody goes there, but you get there and you realize that everybody and their brother goes to Ushuaia. There's a big international airport. There's all the cruise ships. There's tourists everywhere. There's a Hard Rock Cafe. It's
there's a Hard Rock Cafe in Ushuaia.
Yeah. So it's like when you get there, it felt to me like I just got to another city. It didn't feel so much like a destination, other than knowing what it was.
So let's just, for the benefit of the audience, I think so. You started off from around here ish.
Yeah, general
Oregon.
area.
Well, there's fits and starts as we remember, all the way down Chile, down the coast. That looks absolutely beautiful, by the way, with the fjords. And then I think when you get to about here, you kind of hopping from Chile to Argentina, back to Chile, back to Argentina, right? So
A
that's
little
Chile.
bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
what I did is I took a ferry from the end of the Carretera Austral into where Torres del Paine National Park is, which is so
Yeah, okay. So there's the Torres del Paine. I'm
yeah,
guessing the Carretera Austral ends somewhere up here.
yeah, somewhere in there, and yeah, there's a ferry that goes through those fjords and takes
Oh,
you
okay,
from
through
the
here.
end of yeah,
Okay.
and
Then
then
you
I
end
crossed and then I crossed into Argentina on Tierra del Fuego because I came down through Punta Arenas and then crossed over.
Okay, and then you went up in Ushuaia, which is here,
Yep.
and for people that's okay. This is it. This is the end, but not
Right.
not for you.
Not for me. No.
Not for
So
you. For you, you then go from here and you take this little J road here, which
yeah,
is, you almost can't see in the map,
yeah, it's
and
gonna
then you get somewhere here, right?
yeah, somewhere you keep going, but it follows that channel kind of along all the way down. And
Yeah, there you go. See,
yeah,
keeps going, and it's absolutely stunning, the scenery. I was watching the
yeah,
video. Like,
it's an
wow.
incredibly beautiful ride. That was, and it's it's really interesting that so few people go there. The only reason that I knew about it was I had seen, I think Itchy Boots may have gone there, and you occasionally see somebody who goes there, but very few people actually get out there. And it's just a remote former Coast Guard radar station out there, and
Yeah,
it's not
that's all it
manned.
is, right?
Yeah, it's not manned anymore. Now it's automated, so there's just there's nothing there but some horses that are grazing in the field because there's grass, and um,
Wow.
so it was a really neat one. And I think kind of being that far out there and realizing where you are, and it being kind of remote and alone. I think that being in a solitary spot makes you reflect a lot more than being in a busy city like Ushuaia.
I mean, just looking at it, you're closer to Antarctica than you are even to Buenos Aires.
Yes, yeah,
Wow. And it's way further south than South Africa
yes,
or
and
anywhere else,
or New Zealand.
or New Zealand. There you go. Fantastic achievement. I mean, I'm envious. I really am.
Yeah, that's
Especially
one that is
'cause
probably,
I'm from around here. I grew up around here, and you've been there, and I haven't.
yeah, but that's one of those that I'm pretty sure that's a once in a lifetime thing for me, right? There's a lot of places in South America that I've marked of things that I want to go back to and areas that I want to go see more. That is probably one that I'll never have the opportunity or get the chance to go do again.
Okay. Okay. So as you went along, um, and you started with this idea that I've got these places to see, but then I think you could see it in your journey as you went through places, and then you started to meet people, and you had occurrences like your motorcycle getting stolen, and you needing help, and you meeting people, and then the nature of, I think, even watching just the nature of your videos seemed to change from places to people.
Yeah, I mean, I think every video I tried to include an interesting place in, right? Because that's what draws people in for the most part. But yeah, I was one blown away almost from the very start of the trip. Um, I started meeting people, and you start getting WhatsApp numbers from people, and I don't know how many of them. I want to think that everybody was genuine in the come visit, come stay at my house offers, because I took a lot of them up on them. I hope I didn't surprise them or offend them in doing that. But yeah, from basically from as early as Baja, when we met Tomek and I met some guys in Guadalajara, and they were on a trip up there riding Harleys and all sorts of things. And they said, when you come to Guadalajara, come stay with us. And I did. So I met up with them, and then not long after that, I met Caesar. Um, when we were in Copper Canyon, and he was also on a little trip and said, when you come through Durango where I live, come stay with me. And I took him up on it and did, and he turned into, Caesar was probably maybe the biggest reason that everything happened the way it did. I eventually met Carla and that whole bit because of Caesar. If I hadn't, gotten a hold of Caesar, who sent out a message to motorcycle groups and clubs in the area where my motorcycle was stolen, and that's how Carla and them found out I needed help, and then offered to help and put me up and all of that. The rest of that story. That
Carla's
was,
a real star. You sent me some photos. This
yeah,
is Carla.
yeah,
This is on your
yeah.
way back.
Yeah, she's absolutely amazing. I talk to Carla still, once a week on WhatsApp as best I can. You'll know this probably more than a lot of people in the audience, but the Latinas love to use WhatsApp and do voice messages and little flashy pictures. And so, and she talks at about 200 miles an hour in Spanish. And my Spanish has gotten significantly better from when I left, but I am not good enough to understand 200-mile-an-hour Spanish slang. So it's a lot of asking her to type it so I can put it in Translate if I need to.
Yeah, my whole family is on WhatsApp, and my sister never sends one WhatsApp message when she can send 3. So
Yeah,
I know, and my dad now sends notes, which there's this thing called notes in WhatsApp that you can send that I think is like the worst feature, because you can't rewind it and you can't forward it. It's just like annoying. So yeah, so that's Carla. I mean, I think for me she was like the star of the trip. Is this Caesar?
That's Martin. So Martin is one of he lives in the same town as Carla, and he's the president of the motorcycle club there in Ixmiquilpan, which is about probably 30 miles from where my motorcycle was stolen. So when the bike was stolen, Carla and a lawyer named Gustavo came to the hotel where the motorcycle was stolen from. And the lawyer then helped me do all of the paperwork I needed with the police and walked me through that process so that it could get done properly. And then Carla works at a hotel there, and she said, "Come to my hotel. You can stay as long as you want to, and we'll take care of you while you get all this process done and make sure that everything is taken care of and you figure out what you're going to do." So then I stayed there for about three and a half weeks. And Martin and the motorcycle club there, Martin had an extra little motorcycle, and he got it running and let me use it the entire time I was there so that I could go do stuff and get around. And they would, take me to see stuff around the area. They'd pop by and say, do you want to ride to see this canyon? Do you want to go see this lake? Do you want to see this waterfall? Do you want to go hang out and drink beers at the clubhouse? Do you want to do this? Almost every day that I was there, if I wanted to do something, they made sure somebody was willing to come with me. And then I had Martin's motorcycle that he let me use the whole time. So, those guys really, that experience changed so much about what I was going to do. My initial thoughts when the motorcycle was stolen was, I'm going to have to go home, take the ego hit and say I failed at doing what I wanted to do and was going to try to do. And, and after meeting them, and all of the help, I had this real desire that I needed to finish the trip and do it in a way so that, all of that help and all of that was for a reason, not just, for the help, but I felt like I really needed to finish the trip for myself and to not be beaten by that. And because I had this fantastic experience with them. And a big part of it was I wanted to get back to see all of them again. I didn't want, when I left with my stuff in a car to go to the airport, to be the last time I saw them. I wanted to make sure that I came back and got to have the experience that I missed by having the bike stolen.
That's amazing, because it's if had just been the places, you would have seen the places, right? I can see the places, but I think it's the people that give you that boost, right? They say that to raise a kid, it takes a village. I'm guessing just to live, right? Just to exist and to and to survive and to be driven on. It takes a village. It takes you. I don't want to disappoint that person, or I want to see that person. I want to meet them again. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, that was definitely, as you've seen in the videos, and that's why I did basically the whole video when I got back to Mexico with Carla, and I wanted to point that out, that what she did to help me, and I it meant a lot to me, and that's what matters.
100%, 100%. And you sent. I asked for a few pictures of people that were relevant, and you sent me so many. So I guess there's a lot of people here. Obviously, we've seen Carla, we've seen Martin. This is Cesar.
No, that's Andre and Alessandra. Those are my Brazilian friends that I met. It's a fun story.
Your other Brazilian friends.
Yeah, those are the Brazilian friends. Other than Noob.
Yeah, there you go.
And they're that's them as well.
So this is where is this? This is Torres del Paine?
That's Torres del Paine. Yeah. So it's a fun story. We on the Carretera Austral in Chile, I had met another American rider farther up in Chile. We followed each other on Instagram and met up for a day or two. We were in the same spot and had dinner together. And then he ended up leaving a day before me because there was some extra stuff that I wanted to see to start on the Carretera Austral. And if you watch my video on the Carretera Austral, you'll see that the first day I was in the pouring rain doing the ferries and gravel roads, just getting dumped on. And they were all in the first city along the Carretera Austral, and they all decided to wait a day because the rain was so bad and they didn't want to ride in it. So I ended up there, and the other American guy, Terry, and I think there's a whole group picture somewhere in there of all of us. But Terry had met Andre, Alessandra. That's one that has it. So that's Cristiano, who's one of the other Brazilians. He's the one on the Harley Davidson.
Okay, sorry, I'm going too fast.
Yeah, right there, the one with the three of us, and that's Terry on the right hand side there, the other American. And so he met Andre, Alessandra, and Cristiano on the ferry, and so that's how we all got introduced. And after the first day, when we all ended up at the same place again, and we had all passed each other 6 times on the road, we said, let's just all ride together and do this trip as a group instead of a bunch of individuals. And so kind of the whole group of us set off and did the Carretera Austral together, and then we all took the ferry to Torres del Paine together, and then we did Torres del Paine, and then kind of all went our separate ways depending on schedules. But we were almost 2 weeks together as a group by the time we did all of the Carretera Austral and the ferry and all of that. So we all became good friends, and that's one of the reasons that I ended up going to Brazil, which was never high on my list of things to do. No offense, but I didn't know at the time, right? Because it's a long ways out of the way when you think about going along the Andes, which is the stuff that people want to see. Going to Brazil's a long ways out of the way. But they talked me into it. The finances worked that I could, go back up and make that route, which I'm very glad that I did. I loved Brazil. I loved going through Uruguay as well. That was something that I didn't think I would do.
You ended up doing as well, right?
Yeah. And Paraguay. I went, basically all 3 were never really planned because they're kind of out of the way of the normal up and down the Andes route that people take. So, but it's the whole story is just this interweaving of people like this. And so, in the videos you see, I meet up with Andre again in Brazil, and he shows me through kind of the southern area there around Florianopolis and all the canyons inland there. And then I headed off from there. But then I flew back and I met up with them at their house while my bike was being shipped between Colombia and Panama. So, I ended up with people that one like me enough, which it's nice that they're willing to have me, and that I like enough that I want to go see them. So that's great that I ended up with really good friends out of the process that are going to be people that I keep seeing.
What's the difference between doing the ride solo versus doing it in a group? I mean, how does the mentality or the dynamic change?
It both. I would say there's goods and bads to it. When you're with a group, at least I start thinking about, am I holding them back from going the pace they want to go? Am I stopping too often to take too many pictures? And but at the same time with a group, and especially with people who have the temperament of a lot of Brazilians who are always happy. Um, every time we stopped, they were, especially Cristiano, is just so excited to be where he's at, and that's contagious, right? You get excited too. And Andre he knows more about these places and done so much research on stuff. He had all this information to share, so it was really fun to in that way get a more immersive experience doing something like the Carretera with a group. And I'm really glad that I did it that way. But there were places that I was really glad that I did solo and by myself, because I think with other people around, it would have taken away from the experience in a few places.
Yes, because I get this as well, because I do both solo and group. And when you're in a group, you just say, "Oh, I really want to take a picture of this, but I can't stop right now because we're all going at pace, and I can't be the one that's always doing it, because they're just going to ditch me."
Yeah, yeah. But I think most people can understand, because I think all of us at some point ride alone, whether it's just a day trip, somewhere, and we all ride with at least one other person at some point, and you kind of get the how the energy can build up when you have multiple people and things become more exciting and more fun. But there's especially in places like in some of the mountains in Peru, in these really remote places, I think being alone was the right choice for the experience, because you really get an understanding of where you're at, and when you're the lone person in this just massive part of the world where there's no sign of other people around, it's quite humbling to realize how big the world is.
It sure is. I mean, yeah, especially for us folks who live in the city, right? And we all think we know our city, and we know our little area, but then you get out somewhere and these mountains are massive. And yeah, I mean, I got so many pictures that you sent me. I've been finding hard to. I don't want to bore everybody with a slideshow, but there is one guy I want you to tell me a little bit more about, and it's this
Oh,
dude here.
yeah, no, that's Luciano. And Luciano, it's one of my greatest memories of the trip. We I had stopped and with a bunch of other riders, because this is in Patagonia and the wind was just brutal. They were talking about 80 to 90 mile an hour gusts. And so this little gas station that had a couple of hostel rooms for the truck drivers, um, we stopped at, and motorcyclists from all over the world kind of trickled in as that day went on, and the wind started getting stronger and stronger. And ended up there for multiple days waiting for this windstorm to pass, because it was just not safe to ride. And the wind was so bad that they towed in somebody's Sprinter camper van that had been blown off the road and rolled over while they were trying to drive. There were multiple reports of multiple motorcyclists that had been involved in crashes, that the police were telling us about because of the wind. So, it was the right choice to hunker down and stay put while we waited for that windstorm to pass. And while we were there, I was looking at routes, and I saw this dirt trail through Patagonia National Park. And I started asking people if they knew anything about it. And all the motorcyclists said, that's an incredibly remote area. You won't see another person out there. It's not safe to go by yourself, because it's a dirt trail. And if something happens, there is no help. There's nobody out there. It is just empty, and nobody's going to come along for you. So they said, you should not do this alone. You shouldn't do it alone. That's what everybody said, is don't go. It's too dangerous. It's too remote. And So the night before I was getting ready to leave because the wind was calming down, Luciano, who was 24 years old on this little 125 dirt bike, came up to me and said, "I heard you wanted to go ride this route." He's like, "I'll go with you if you want to go." And I said, "Okay, let's do it." And so we spent, it is maybe the most beautiful ride that you can do in South America through Patagonia National Park and where this goes. It's as roads go, it's just incredible. And so we spent the day together, and being Argentinian, he stops every 40 minutes for a mate break. And so, we'd sit there and, just take in the views and drink some mate and talk.
Did you have the whole gourd and spoon thing?
Oh yeah, yeah. The gourd, the spoon, the bomba, and a thermos of hot water. With all that little stuff that he has packed, he had like one pair of pants, but he had room for a thermos with hot water and the mate and the whole bag of mate, the gourd and everything.
Priorities, mate. Priorities.
Yeah,
They
that's
just
the
keep
that's
you
the
going.
Argentinians though. They all travel that way. They always have some kind of mate making thing wherever they go. But it was
Yeah,
great to just stop and talk to him, in my broken Spanish and his broken English. We were able to communicate, but I think it's such a great story, and it reminded me of being young and early in motorcycling when you don't have all the gear, you don't have the good motorcycle. We all get caught up in having the fancy gear, the right motorcycle. You have to have all this stuff. When you don't, you can tie a duffel bag on with shoelaces and go in your sweatpants and your little pullover jacket. That's the gear that he had. But he was out having an adventure and exploring his country and going to these incredible places. And it
amazing.
and it inspired me. It's as much as what I was doing was a big thing. It was a big thing for me, but what he was doing was a big thing for him. And that's a reminder of, I'm inspired by anybody doing anything that is new and adventurous, no matter what it is. And this was basically his first big motorcycle trip by himself and on this little 125 because that's all he had. And, with the stuff that he had. But he was out having an adventure. And every time we stopped, he had the biggest smile on his face. And, he would point off at the mountains and, tell me how beautiful it is. And, he was so proud of his country. And he's like, Argentina is so beautiful. Don't you love it here? I love it here. I love my country. And, it was just
As
a
you
great
should, man.
memory.
It is absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. And yeah, on an XC. So I think I remember I thought the XCs were 200, but these are 125s.
Yeah, this is the 125, a little 125 four-stroke.
And you're on the CRF 250.
The 250, yeah.
He's got better tires than you have for that road.
He
But yeah,
he did for sure.
and yeah, I guess I don't know the young, dumb and full of cum, I think is they call it, isn't it? Or
Yeah,
full of go, right?
yeah, but like I said, it brought back memories of my first motorcycle trip and doing that stuff, and then and the excitement of it, and it inspired me that that there are, especially as the motorcyclists and kind of the industry is going towards a bunch of old guys, and they talk about how the younger generation's not into motorcycles, not buying them. It's neat to see a young guy out doing it and
100%.
just loving it and having the time of his life, because that's what's going to keep it going. And motorcycle and motorcycle travel's given me so much. It would be a shame if the next generation doesn't get to experience it too.
No, I think it's a thing in more developed countries, right, where
Yeah.
they want to legislate all risk away, right? They don't
Yeah.
want you to take any risk. They don't want you getting injured. So now over here to get qualified for a motorcycle license costs so much money because you have to get so much training before they'll let you on the road and all that kind of stuff. And that just puts young people who don't have money. These motorcycles supposed to be a cheap way for them to get around and get independent. Other countries in Europe have a different attitude. But yeah, it's nice to see that around the world people are still getting on their bikes. And people laugh about riders in certain countries and their attitude to personal protection gear and all that kind of stuff. But guess what? If you have to get to your job and if you don't get there, you're going to starve. The risk of injury to your head it becomes
It is.
it's relative, right? It's relative. You have to go and do your job, or you need to go and have an adventure. You're not going to have an adventure if you have to wait until you've got a BMW GS. Luciano is never going to have a BMW GS, but he's had an adventure.
Yeah, and the risk changes, because that's so normalized, and that's the way that they go everywhere. It's the speeds that they're going, the way traffic flows, all of that, and especially in places like Colombia or places in Central America where the motorcycle and scooters are by far the most dominant form of transportation. It's almost like people are using them like bicycles. So you don't have to pedal, right? And just the speeds they're going and the way traffic flows. It's not like riding motorcycles in North America and Europe. You're never going to go 100 or 120 kilometers an hour, right? That's just never going to happen in the traffic and the road systems there. They're going 30 kilometers an hour at, everywhere.
If that. Cool.
Yeah, if that.
But okay, so any more people to call out, or?
I mean, there's always more people. I think there was a couple that I met again in Argentina. I stayed at their cabana, and again,
there's this guy.
Oh, that's Giorgio, the Italian.
Okay.
And yes, I that's one. In hindsight, I wish I had more video with Giorgio. I didn't take a lot, but one of the things I decided partway through the trip was that I wasn't going to just pull out the camera and try to film with people, because it ruins those moments where you actually have interactions and conversations, because as soon as the camera comes out, it has a different dynamic. So I didn't do it. But yeah, I met up with Giorgio along the way two or three times.
Mm-hmm.
We were in the same place, and we rode together. We did the Malditos, which is one of the more infamous stretches of the Route 40 in Argentina. And we did that together, and then we met up a couple of times. And then I was actually partway through the trip, my parents had their 50th wedding anniversary, and one of the things they wanted to do was do a family vacation to Italy, of all places they wanted to go. So my whole family flew to Italy, and we did that. And afterwards, Giorgio had gotten home and was in Italy, so I took a few extra days and took the train up to where he lives, and I spent I think 5 or 6 days at his house, and using his extra motorcycle, riding around northern Italy with him. So it's one of those like meeting up with Andre and Alessandra again in Brazil. Is I ended up meeting a friend that I get to go see again, and we have plans for he wants to ride to Alaska in 2027. So I think that he's gonna come here, maybe even get a motorcycle here in Portland and stay here, and then I may go part way with him. I'll see. But yeah, we've already talked about that, and we keep in touch. So that's another one of those. You just never know where you're gonna meet somebody and
Amazing.
and be a friend. And this is that couple in Argentina that's one of those, just the hospitality of random strangers, and I ended up in a small town but that's actually quite a popular spot for Argentinians to go vacation in. And so I couldn't find a hotel room anywhere. And so I'm looking for everything I saw, and I saw a little sign stapled to a pole for a cabana for rent. And I was like, well, I'm desperate. I haven't found anything to stay at. So I called the number, and and got this couple, and they had set up a small little A-frame cabana in their backyard. And yeah, I don't know if I have another picture of it with them, but
I did think you did send me, but I couldn't put every picture in here.
yeah.
Sorry, there was a couple in there, because all I can focus on is the absolute mountain of meat that's on that table.
Yeah, but then I ended up staying 4 days or something like that, because I was having so much fun, and they were so happy to have me there. And they would take time out of their day, and they'd let's go. We know this hike that you've got to go see. We'll take the truck. You don't have to put all your motorcycle gear. We'll all go do the hike together. And they showed me around, and we'd go, they did an asado at their house one night. And then, they took me to the different restaurants and different places to go hear, a music festival and all this stuff. And we just had just a fantastic time. But just that hospitality of people, that it would be very easy to just have rented a place, stayed the night and gone, but they made, they turned it into a place that was memorable and where I had such a fantastic time just because they were so welcoming and wanted to share their little part of the world with me.
Amazing. Amazing. Wow. Okay. So let's maybe shift a little bit. So amazing. I mean, I'm very, very envious of everything that you did, and an amazing journey and amazing people. But I think with this being a motorcycle channel, maybe we can talk a little bit about the bike. So is it still, it's still in one piece?
Absolutely. It is. That bike proved to be bulletproof. The entire time I had one mechanical issue that didn't stop me. I was able to ride it all the way into the next town where there was a Honda dealer. But the spring inside of the cam chain tensioner broke.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't tensioning the cam chain, but luckily that motor's not an interference motor, so it just ran. It just made noise and, maybe was off a few degrees in its firing time, but it made it into the next town. Being a Honda, the little Honda dealer there looked up the part number and cross-referenced it, and it's used in like 17 different motorcycles globally. The same, so they had them in stock because it was used in a small motorcycle that they sell there, or one of the scooters or something. And yeah, that was the only mechanical thing I did that wasn't normal maintenance or preventative maintenance in advance. And yeah, it made it back here. Runs to this day. I wouldn't hesitate to go do another 50,000 miles on it.
That's amazing. I have a few friends who ride CRF 250s, but they just do it on the local green lanes. And when I told them about you and I shared your channel to them, and I said, how did you do like that much mileage on the CRF?
Well, I did it slowly, but yeah, I mean, the big part is, right, some things, I have an aftermarket seat that's very comfortable. That makes a huge difference, right? You can't sit on a stock 250 dirt bike seat for that long. But yeah, no, that little bike just goes. And no, I did not take spare tires. Being that they're tubed tires, so flats are easy to fix. I had spare tubes, both front and rear. And if I got a flat and swapped it out, the next motorcycle shop I found, I would buy another spare tube, so I didn't have a patched tube if I didn't need to. And then tires I just bought when I needed them. Sometimes it was hard to find, and so you need to start planning in advance. You can't wait till they're completely worn out to start looking for tires, because they may not have your size, or if they have your size, it may only be a dirt bike tire, which isn't going to get me more than another 200 miles down the road. That's no good. I need a tire that I can travel on. But I don't think it's worth the weight penalty of carrying tires. I think there's very few places in the world where you actually would need to carry tires if you don't plan ahead a little bit. When you're going into areas where you can't get tires, put fresh ones on. Pay the extra $100. Who cares? Right? In the end of the day, spend a little bit of extra money to make sure you don't have a problem down the road.
I didn't use that last tire all the way to the bottom, but
right.
Exeter Riders firing off lots of questions. So why the Rally and not the 250L?
The biggest one was it was for sale when
it was available, right?
Yeah. When the DR650 was stolen, which was the motorcycle I had picked for the trip for the reliability and the size, and that was the motorcycle I wanted to do it on. But when it was stolen, that was a big financial hit, and I knew that whatever I bought, that money that I spent on it was money coming out of being able to travel for longer. So the 250 Rally came up for sale at a really good price, and that's why it's a 250 and not a 300, because the 300s were another $3,000 more expensive, even on the used market, because they were more desirable than the 250. So I got a really good deal on the 250, and I said, you know, this is a motorcycle that can do the trip on. I'm not a very big guy, so I said I need something that I can pick up on my own as well. I can't do this on a, you know, a middleweight adventure bike or a big adventure bike, because if I'm in the middle of nowhere by myself, I need something that I can actually pick up. So it needed to be a smaller bike, and it was available. So that's why I had no real preference on the 250L or the Rally, or, you know, a DRZ 400 or some other bikes that were on the short list of things that I would do it on. And this one came up for the right price and in the right place that I could buy it.
Okay. Well, whilst we're on the subject of having some questions, I do have one more thing I want to explore. But ER has one more question about research done to avoid bad areas, etc.
Yeah, I think that just as a general bit of advice for anything, and this would go for Africa, Central Asia, Central America, South America, is it's very hard to research anything like that in advance. Things change incredibly fast. That's where you need to be willing to ask people and talk to people. When I was going through Mexico, whether it was stopping at a gas station, asking another motorcyclist, asking people in the stores, the people in the area know their area. They know where it's not safe, and they know what's happening in pretty close to real time. Um, Anything you look at on the internet is going to be so out of date by the time it's on the internet that it's not going to really be useful or pertinent. So the trick is, when you're in areas that are kind of known hotspots, is ask the locals whether your route is safe or not. They'll tell you, and they'll be very honest, and probably on the cautious side of honest, because they don't want something to happen to somebody on their advice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, everywhere I went, people were well aware of, you know, making sure that I didn't go in places that they knew were problematic. But there were very few of those places too. Even in places that maybe aren't the safest, if you're riding through during the day, it's usually not as unsafe, especially as a foreigner. A lot of the places, the cartels and things in Mexico, don't want a reason for the U.S. State Department or, you know, the UK State Department to get involved, or
It's
so,
bad
you
for
know,
business.
it's probably a lot more dangerous for the people who live there and the locals to travel through those areas than it is for a foreigner in a lot of ways. But yeah, just ask people in your route, and a lot of people everywhere are very helpful in the routing along the way, because they know the things to go see in their area that you may not know, or that may not be on Google as well. They're going to know that if you take this road instead of that road, it's a prettier ride, and there's a waterfall to stop at, and they'll tell you about it and say, no, this one's just a better route. It's more interesting and it's safer.
Always listen to the locals.
Yeah.
Always listen to the locals. Okay. So I'm just keeping an eye. I'm not sure if you've got a hard stop at the hour, but yeah.
I don't have a hard stop, no. So whatever timing you have, I can accommodate.
Cool. All right. Well, the one thing that really I kind of wanted to get to. So we talked about what sparked the journey, how it changed as you went, and shifted sort of from places to people, and how the people made it worthwhile, and how the people spurred you on to actually complete the journey. And you know, and then in your last video of the trip, when you actually get back home, and you're on your way, and you've seen the mountain that tells you that you're home, and then you finally get home, and then you talk about it being the end, maybe the end of the Dewey Rides channel as it exists. So kind of what are the plans now that you've done this journey, this one has ended, so what's the rest of the journey? What does that look like?
Well, you know, I don't know. That's the big thing, and it's an unknown. And my channel isn't big enough, I don't think. And after doing these videos for so long, I just don't really have the desire to try to force making content and try to get a weekly video or even a bi-weekly video, or, you know, every 2-week video out. I don't want it to be forced. So I said the channel as you know it. I didn't say the channel. I tried to use that word on purpose, because I plan to at some point make new content, but I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know where it'll be or what I'll be doing. It'll be when I when I find something that I want to share and I want a video, a lot of it is stuff that I want to have a memory for myself of too. You know, I do a lot of this stuff, so I have the videos for myself to go watch when I'm old, right? Yeah. So yeah, I just don't know if it's gonna, you know, it may be whatever I do in the future may be less of a motor vlog and, you know, more scenic footage and voiceover than
Yeah.
in it may be more of the same. It may just be when I am doing a trip of some sort that I think is interesting, whether it's here in the States or you know, in another international trip that I decide I want to share. And I
I
just
mean,
don't know.
I can honestly say when I first found your channel, that was kind of what attracted me to it. Is like the almost the cinematography and the shots that you were doing, even before when you were just doing your little trail rides or little weekend trips and stuff. It was always high quality in terms of the footage, the framing, the editing was always very, very neat. And that obviously carried on. And I think you know you had a really good grounding for that. So I mean, I'd love to see content if there's something interesting to show, but I think you're right. You can't be forced into it. It's got to be something that you enjoy, because it ain't going to pay the bills.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I don't make anything. My channel's not monetized. It never has been. I've never had enough watch time or views to get there. So, you know, I did it because I wanted to share it and I wanted to have the memory of it for myself. And that's a big part of why I finished the videos too. You know, that is even though I didn't have, you know, maybe a lot of viewers, the viewers that I had were so supportive along the entire trip and watched from start to finish, you know, the trip. And I felt like I owed it to myself and I owed it to them to finish the videos, and make sure the story was wrapped up. I didn't want to just disappear, even if I wasn't 100% into making videos towards the end. I wanted to make sure that they were there.
I'm sure. I don't think you were making it for all of us, to be honest, John. I think you're making them specifically for Patrick, because you called him out every single video.
Yeah, you know, that's it. And I still to this day, when I see an altitude sign, I think of Patrick. You know, but that's
The
when,
Patrick we're talking about was Motor Ramblings
yeah.
for those who don't know.
Yeah, Moto Ramblings. And that story goes back to, you know, one of my earliest videos, you know, when my videos were, you know, when I had less than 100 subscribers and I'd get, you know, 8 or 10 views on a video, you know, and one of those views was Patrick. And he constantly was asking about altitude because he's from a part of the world where they don't have big mountains, you know, and where I'm at, even close to home here, I have big mountains. Nothing like the Andes, but they're still big mountains. And so yeah, it was just every video from the very beginning, he would ask about altitude unless I said it, and so I just started thinking about him every time I see an altitude sign.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, here's an idea from you. I'm sure you know this, but you have a book in the making. And maybe even become a speaker. Maybe even come to ABR. You should come to the Adventure Bike Ride Festival.
We'll see if they do it. I posted on ABR's post yesterday on Facebook that they showed of the ABR festival, and I said, you know, if you want me as a speaker in 2027, maybe I'd have a good excuse to come. But yeah, I honestly think there's a book in there. The problem is, the hardest part is that I don't consider myself a very good writer, and it's really hard for me to get excited about the process of writing a book. One thing that I don't know that I ever mentioned it in the videos, and I haven't shared it anywhere, is I have a journal from every night of the trip. I made sure that I wrote 3 paragraphs every single night of the trip. I made myself do it from day one.
Oh, wow.
And I specifically set out that every day I would have a paragraph about what the day was like, was one of the paragraphs, just kind of a quick overview. One of them was a place that I stopped along the way that I found very interesting and a little bit about that place. And the third paragraph was somebody that I met, whether it was somebody at a gas station that came up and said hi and wanted to know where I was going, and we had a good conversation, or sometimes it was people that became, you know, the Andres and the Carlas of the trip. But yeah, every day of the trip, I have that stuff written down in the history of it, so I can go back and look through it and, you know, maybe somehow try to compile it into a book at some point if I ever feel confident enough in trying to write it and share it. It's really hard, I think, more so than the videos, to think about sharing what you write and the feelings that come with the writing. That's a very big and very personal thing to share. And I'll decide maybe at some point I will, maybe I won't.
Those are the best books, right? If you read what's her name? Got to Go. I forgot her name right now.
The German woman, I forget her name.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot her name right now. But yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she is.
But then again, she did start life as a travel writer,
Right.
so that kind of, I guess that helps. But yeah, I mean, diaries. Who had a motorcycle diaries and became quite famous was Che Guevara.
Yeah, Che Guevara's. There's been a few other, this obviously stuff like Sam Madigan is doing, and there's incredible writers out there, and and Ted Simon, right? I mean, some of this stuff goes back a long time that people have been doing it. It's having the confidence though to do it and share it.
Yeah. Oh.
I think the first that I could potentially share with some film festivals or something like that. That'll probably be the first project I do before a book, if I ever sit down to write a book.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the sentiment. I think it's absolutely criminal that you don't get more views, because but unfortunately we're kind of in this day and age where the algorithm only pushes stuff that's going to get people engaged, and the best way to engage people is to enrage people or to cause controversy. And so if you're just showing something beautiful that people are just going to love, and I think a lot of people would benefit from watching that, but it doesn't get pushed.
Yeah, I mean the hard part is, and I have a few theories on it. There's a lot of people writing in a lot of beautiful places. I certainly don't have a corner on the market on that. So I think there's just a lot of other channels like that, and I think at some point, people only have so much time, and if you watch one or two other travel type writers, that kind of is your time that you're going to a lot for watching them, and you're not going to find other people. And I was never willing to do the stuff that makes me mad watching a video on YouTube. I was never going to do a thumbnail or a title that wasn't really what it was about. I'm not going to say, I nearly died, just to get somebody to click on it with. That's not what happens, and or use, this is the most epic ride. There's only, one or two epic rides that you're going to do, even on a trip like mine, that I would say are really epic. And so, I'm not going to say that in every one.
I don't know, man. Compared to Essex Rose, everything you did looked epic. So we talked a lot about the high points, the great places, the great people. Were there any low points as a counterpart? Were there any like bad people or bad moments?
Honestly, the bad people, I can count on one hand, literally the number of bad interactions I had in 2.5 years. I think that says a lot about people in general. That even no matter where in the world you are, almost everybody you meet is going to be friendly. You're not going to meet people who aren't. The guy who stole my motorcycle was one of them. I remember. I distinctly remember a drunk man in Uyuni, Bolivia, and I was just walking down the street, going from my hotel to dinner, and this drunk man and said some stuff in Spanish and by that point in the trip I understood, and I knew who it was directed at, and but that diffused pretty quick when I responded very strongly in Spanish to what he said, and his eyes got very wide, and the two women behind him started laughing really loud because they realized what he had said to me, assuming that the gringo wasn't going to know what he said. And when he got a response back in Spanish, then he got really wide. And this was a little Bolivian man, so I was a foot taller than he was to begin with. But there's not many of those type of interactions at all. Generally, people were so friendly everywhere I went, and I think a big part of that is being solo on a motorcycle. I think anywhere you go in the world, people understand the vulnerability of traveling on a motorcycle. The Santiago, Are you guys just getting there, Craig, or are you guys just leaving? Santiago's
Yeah.
a beautiful city. It's big though.
We'll see if he responds. Would you ever travel to Europe, or is it not your thing?
No, absolutely love to. There's a lot of stuff in Europe I want to go see, and I have extended family in northern Germany, so I've actually been to Europe multiple
Okay.
times. I've just never done a motorcycle tour other than the time that I rode with Giorgio when I went in northern Italy there around his area. He lives kind of between Verona and Venice in northern Italy.
Lovely. Yeah.
So yeah, no, there's a lot of I would love to ride, the Alps, the Dolomites. I'd love to go up into Scandinavia. I think, a Norwegian trip up through Norway and the fjords up to Nordkapp or something. I'd love to go do, a lap of Ireland. I've seen like Noob's video, there's just some beautiful places there.
It's stunning. But yeah, but
North Coast 500. It's just time and money. The difference is, you're going to spend 3 times as much per day in Western Europe than you are in South America.
No, way more than that.
Maybe more, especially in Scandinavia, right?
Unless you're doing wild camping.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just, it's a much
very expensive.
Yeah, it's a much bigger economic ask to go do any kind of long-term trip. But there's a few, I have a couple of friends here that I ride with all the time. You've seen them in a bunch of the videos, and we've talked about going to, Spain or Italy and renting bikes and doing kind of a Riviera trip, starting in Barcelona or Malaga and end in, Milan or something like that, right? And do the Spanish and French and Italian Rivieras type thing.
Yeah, I can do that.
That's high on the list.
There is a Trans Zero Trail if you want. There's a whole network of off-road routes that you can do. So if you want to do off-road, I'll tell you that we talk about the Riviera. That's a very densely populated area, so there's going to be a lot of traffic. But even if you go into what I did, the Route Napoleon and the Pre-Alps, those are some stunning roads, and the canyons in France are just amazing. But if you get off of the beaten track, again, you'll meet tons of interesting people.
Yeah. I think the next, if I get a chance, you never know what's going to happen with life and work and money and the world. I really want to do a Central Asia one next, but I'd probably start in Europe if I do that. So that's just a timing, but I would really like to go do like the Pamir and some of that stuff before the Chinese get a chance to pave over it all and it's not as wild. I want to go do that stuff while it's still a bit wild. I think it wouldn't be the same experience once the infrastructure is in place to make everything easy.
Yeah, and it make it easier and more people come, right? And then people start getting fed up of the tourists.
Yep. But to answer Exeter's rider, I sold my F800 BMW to do this trip, basically because I decided I wanted something smaller just for the remoteness. If I was doing something like Europe, and unless I was doing strictly the Trans Euro Trail, because I've seen some of the riding there and there's some difficult sections where I'd want a small bike. But for general use, I think the 250, unless you're in developing nations, the 250 is just too small for the developed world to really be usable. I did not particularly enjoy riding cross country in the US on the freeways. It's just, I'm slower than the semi trucks or lorries, right, as you guys call them.
Yeah.
On the 250.
So, sorry. I think I'm being called for singing happy birthday to my sons. But one more thing. I have one more question. So if you had a time machine and you could go back and give younger Dewey a piece of advice, how far back will you go? To what time, and what's the advice that you give yourself back in the past?
I think there would be two. One is kind of in the context of the trip. I would go back to before I left and tell myself to embrace the hard times and embrace the trouble, because it's going to lead to the best stuff. And you know that, and we always talk about it, right? And, the adventure begins when the trip goes wrong and stuff like that, right? All these cliche sayings, but there's a truth in being comfortable with knowing that you're going to get through stuff, even if you do it, and to embrace it, because you might have some of the best memories from it, and to not miss things because you may be afraid of the name, right? Like a place like Sinaloa, there's a lot of beautiful places and a lot of amazing people, and if you go there
It's
being
not
scared of the
cartel.
place, you miss out on it.
Yeah.
The other piece would be, I would go back to when I was, maybe a teenager, and say to, prioritize doing this stuff early, because I think the experience you get in your 20s is far different from the one you get in your 40s, and that's far different from the one you get in your 60s. And they're all good, but you want to have all of them. Don't just always put everything off until it's easy and you can afford it, or the time is there. You need to prioritize making the time and having the experiences.
100%. But here's the question: would younger Dewey listen to the advice?
I think I would. I think the harder part was, when we all know, when you're young, right? It's just harder economically. Everything's harder economically when you're young. You're still starting out. You're not established. You don't have savings. So, I don't think I could have at 22 just taken off to travel. I just couldn't have afforded it no matter what. But I think if I had started earlier, just putting small amounts away to be able to travel more, instead of wanting to buy the newer, faster motorcycle, even, right? Or
Mhm.
whatever, stuff that we all spent money on that maybe wasn't as important as I thought it was. It was just, to tell myself to prioritize it and try to do that would be what I would say.
Right, right. What you got, that you can have you can have an adventure in any bike, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
people doing
exactly.
going around the
And
world in C90s and postie bikes and stuff like that. So
when you're having to finance the motorcycle just to try to keep up with what your buddies think you should have, or get a newer, flashier bike, you don't have the money to ride it and do the stuff that you're really going to enjoy it on. You just have the bike. So
cool, very, very cool. I mean, fantastic. I've really enjoyed catching up. I really enjoyed following along on your trip. As I said, an inspiration. I think the quality of the videos that you produced at every stage, they were short, to the point. They were full of information. They were full of the best sites. It was amazing. Really, really enjoyed it, and really enjoyed kind of catching up with you and where you are, and I hope you settle back in, and I can't wait for some more content when you're ready, and for the next adventure.
well, I really appreciate it. Thanks for chatting with me. It's good to talk to you, and I'm sure we'll do this again. Hopefully with something new and interesting that I can share when we talk about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Really looking forward to it. I mean, again, I can't get around the fact 809 days. That's well over 2 years, two and a half years, right?
Yeah, nearly. Yeah,
52,000 miles. I mean, I've had my motorcycle since 2020, and I haven't put that many miles on that.
yeah. It's and I realized too that I went at a pretty slow pace. Like, if I rode every day instead of taking so much time off to just go do stuff and explore places, I could have easily done twice the mileage in that time frame.
But what's the point? It's not a statistics
Yeah,
thing, right? It's about meeting
right.
people and seeing places. And I see that the Donkey Sunrise a cap that was
Yeah,
on the motorcycle at all times, and I think clearly that place made a mark on you.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I would say, for anybody in Europe, that wants a nice vacation in the winter when things are terrible there, it's a super economical way to go have an amazing adventure. Fly down there. They have rental motorcycles. They have everything to do. There's a ton of stuff that's within day trips. You can just fly there, set up a home base, rent a motorcycle, do day trips into all of the best stuff that Colombia has, and it's right there. and it's, you know, just that part of the world is so cheap compared to Western Europe or North America that you can have a really good budget adventure and go see some amazing places.
This is the place?
Yeah, that's the place.
Sorry, just zooming out so I can see. Oh, wow. Okay. Right. Okay. So just between Cali and Medellin. Lovely. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's right between Cali and Medellin, and it's right in, that's called the, you know, the coffee triangle. But like the Carretera Valley with the big wax palms is 2 hours away. You know, there's all that stuff is right in there. So you can go see a ton of stuff doing day trips.
Amazing.
And then have a home base, and that's comfortable, amazing food. Like it is generally a very special place, and what they're doing there is really special. And it's easy to fly in, and they'll help you sort out everything.
Very good. Very, very good. Well, Dewey, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody in the chat with the questions. Shmoda Travels, who's seems like he's coming back from an amazing adventure. Extra Rider, and also John from Road Reality there earlier on, and Slow Rider, who's going to have a little social ride in April. Looking forward to going to that. Yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you, everybody. Don't forget, if you haven't already done so, I don't know why you haven't done it, go subscribe to Dewey Rides and watch these amazing adventure trips. You won't regret it. You can thank me later. But John, it's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you. Good to see you doing well. Good to see the beard.
Yeah, the beard is back, and thanks for having me, and thanks for taking the time, Noob. I really appreciate it, and thanks for everybody who watched and commented along the way, and you know, and joined the lives and watched the videos. I really do appreciate it.
Okay, fantastic. With that, thank you very much. Have a great day. All right, all the best.
Yep.